This video from September 22 is our big bike ride up to Idaho with Jim Wismer, Tom Meyer, Sean and Mike Eason, and James Blackwell and myself on that map for 9 days and about 3,000 miles. We are in Bishop, stopping for gas, maybe 500 miles off road. Driving through Nevada here and through Tonopah. There's the power plant, and then over through this map to Kingston, Nevada, to the Lucky Spur Saloon to stop for a beer. There's not much else in Kingston beyond this bar, but it's about 2 miles from the campsite. So we had a beer, made our way up a little bit higher elevation to get away from the desert heat, and nobody was at the campground. So this was very nice. We had a fire that night, cooked some bag food. There's James in the glow of the fire and the moon, and then took off the next morning to continue past this lake and then up and over that same mountain range to get to the west side. And then we continued up north to Austin, Nevada to have breakfast. We climbed up to about 8,500 feet. I had forgotten to turn my traction control off, so I dumped the bike as I was going very slowly around that corner. Gotta have the traction control totally off. Very steep downhill there, and that was the last time I dumped the bike. A couple small stream crossings, then back out to the flat of the desert. I'm in front here, so I have nice clean air, unfortunately for the guys behind me. And then we had breakfast at Grandma's. Somebody had tossed a cigarette out the window, not a good idea. And then we continued up north through Nevada. It's a long, flat area, but really nice open desert. We jumped on the highway I-80 for a few miles. This is the Carlin Tunnel, built in 1903, and then you see the gold ore trucks coming down from the gold mines. Finally, we got off on some dirt on our way up to Jarbidge, Nevada, just below the Idaho state line. Gold was discovered up here in the late 1800s, and a little town here called Charleston was developed. That's the old schoolhouse that was set up. Now more of a ranch area, just a few old ranch houses. We're up at about 8,400 feet here, which is why we see these beautiful aspen trees at this elevation. Really nice to drive through. And we stop for a snack for lunch, like you saw each day. We typically have restaurant breakfasts and sometimes a restaurant, sometimes bag food for dinner. But on the drive on the day, we have a snack on trail. So we're going back down into the town of Jarbidge. There's the post office and the huge gas station, the bars and restaurants, and just had enough gas for a couple of the bikes, and then worked our way up the Jarbidge River Valley, which was really cool. These rock formations along the river as we made our way back up to the plateau at the top of this area. The first day was 480 miles. This is day two, so we did 406. So these are big days. Then we came upon the Salmon Falls Dam and Salmon Falls Reservoir. This was built in 1910, and only a couple times the water came to the top of that dam. We stayed at KOA and Twin Falls, and then the next morning left and had breakfast in Shoshone at the Manhattan Cafe. The place was built in 1890. Made our way up past the ice caves and nearby the crater of the moon, then up to Ketchum, and then over those mountain passes, three different passes up to the northeast, up and down, up to the pass, and then back down to the valley. There's James throwing a boulder over the top of the cliff, something he can't resist. Then just all backwoods fire roads, beautiful road conditions, rivers, and really a fine day. You can start to see the smoke in the air here. This is still fire season, and throughout the trip we did have some fires burning up away from us, but we can still see some of the effect of that. Then we stopped here for a break and then made our way up over the next pass. Just beautiful back roads, open range. You do have to be careful for cows walking around up here, but we're basically up and down from up to maybe 8,000 feet at the top of these hills, and then a few thousand feet, a couple thousand back into the valleys. We ended up back down in the McKay Valley and the McKay Valley Reservoir. You can see that interesting house. There's a reservoir. Those would be the Teton Mountains out in the distance, but it's pretty smoky. And then we went through the Pass Creek Narrows, one more up and over, back up to about 7,500 feet, and finally back down to some farmland as we approached our destination, which is Island Park. I led most of the trip with navigation, but at times we took turns leading. I did get off in some farm country. Mike was not too impressed with my road selection here, but uh, really had some different variation of road surfaces, and then ended up that evening in Island Park. And we got to our campground after a long 3 days of driving. Days 4, 5, and 6 were based on camping and spurring out from the camp to nearby trails, typically starting with breakfast there at Trout Hunter Lodge. So we dumped most of our camping stuff at the campsite, and then this is a look at Mesa Falls. This is Henry Creek and really nice waterfalls. Bikes all lined up here. And then we continued down to the south, and my intention was to find this old railroad bed. It turned out we could not go south on that, but after some confusion on my part, we got back on this old grade. The tracks had been pulled out. This was really cool up on the ledge and the old tunnel overlooking the river. So this is an old railroad track that ran down this valley. The tunnel was closed, so we had to go around. This was a little bit sketchy, and then back on the trail. I think that's Sean in front, and then we'll work our way back up to the north, back up onto the flat plateau. This is all open range, so sometimes the animals would get out of your way. Sometimes that big guy just wasn't having it, so you have to go around. I saw this old house foundation and got somewhat lost and found the road again. We stopped at I think this is called Black Gulch or Black Canyon for lunch, and got somewhat stuck on some dead end roads, but made our way over to Big Springs and the uh, Henry Creek or Henry River. This creek comes out from under the lava flows from Yellowstone and flows 120 million gallons a day. Those are trout swimming in the stream. There's no fishing there. I stopped by a lodge hoping to get a beer that was not open, but super nice. Also, back to camp here, but had to move some tents around because the campsite wasn't very happy with us. This second day from the camp was mostly at Yellowstone Park. This is on the way going over a really cool old bridge up. This, I believe, was another old railroad grade. It was also the Great Western Trail, as that sign says. In that last little clip, there was a deer crossing up ahead. And then I took the guys up a 50-inch wide snowmobile or ATV trail that was a little bit sketchy for these big bikes. I sat down for some, stood up for some. It was fairly steep, fairly rocky, but we all made it up this. And a little bit sketchy, but got to the top of this beautiful plateau. Somewhere along the way here, Jim caught his foot on one of the rocks sticking out from the side trail and broke his ankle somewhere in here. and didn't really realize it until the trip went on. But he rode the entire trip from this point forward with a broken ankle and ended up with a cast after he got home. Mike stopped here. He spread some of the ashes from our friend Mark Helm, who loved this area, and I had spread some ashes in that spring on the prior day. It was kind of a special couple of times where we got to say a final farewell as he loved this area so much. We stopped here at the Firehouse Barbecue in West Yellowstone and then got into the Yellowstone Park. That's the Firehole Creek little spur road off the main road through the park. The sun wasn't really out too much here. That's Prismatic Springs and the river, and we stopped here for a snack. Then the flood geyser took off while we were sitting there. Just had a nice loop drive. It was kind of a long trip through the park. Not too much traffic, but did see some bison here on the left on that field by the Yellowstone River. And then made our way up to the Artist Park area in the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. That's the beautiful Yellowstone River, and this canyon's just amazing. So that was a highlight, and then circled back and headed out west, back towards West Yellowstone. This guy was right on the roadway, didn't seem to care at all about us riding by. We stopped for an O-ring to repair Jim's bike. There's a bear, mama and cub that crossed way up there in front of me. That was kind of cool. And then headed back towards camp on some of the same trails. Really a nice day seeing the park, and then good Mexican dinner back in Island Park. So that was 190 miles, and then this is the next day, day 6, which was about 115. I took us on a southwest loop through the woods here. It was a little bit muddy and wet on this day. We couldn't go further because this was private property, so kind of an in and out, but still a really fun time to ride. That's Tom in front of me there, and then a little bit later on, Tom on the right and James on the left. You see James hot dog around here, so fun to follow the guys and get some video of others riding. There's James after going through a huge puddle too fast and soaked himself.
Oh, that was fun.
So just a blast riding through these areas. I had mapped out some optional trails all through this area, so we never quite know what we're going to do, but kind of put together the trip as we go and have all these trails on GPS and my phone on the Gaia app, and then the other guys have those tracks as well. This was super cool. A big herd of cattle being herded back to the ranch by some cowboys. So we took it easy going by these guys, but very cool to see that going on. There's Mike. He ended up showing us where our friend Mark had his cabin up here, but also led up this spur up to the top of the mountains just west of Island Park. This was pretty steep. We could have gone a little farther, but would have ended up hitting the Continental Divide Trail, which is a pretty gnarly trail up at the top of that mountain. Saw some Jeep guys, had a good chat with them, but just a nice little off-road spur, and then had lunch up on top of that mountain. Heading back towards Island Park. James in front of me there, and then we headed over to the Shotgun Bar just outside of town and left a signed dollar bill for Mark on the wall there. James found a friend. His name was Dozer, the bulldog. So that was pretty fun. So the next day we took that green route over to the east and south, over to the Grand Teton Park area, and found this really nice road, the Ashton Flag Ranch, I think it's called. Really nice road. That's a white post as a snow gauge. Bunch of water back in here, but the road was in really good shape. That's Mike up ahead. and this road popped out just north of the Grand Teton Park. This came up upon Grassy Lake, really nice little reservoir. There's Sean, there's James. James splashing me with a huge puddle. Good reminder not to travel right where I was traveling. So we're all loaded up with our camping gear here. I'll let James pass so he gets some better video, but always fun to kind of chase someone through that back roads area. This is Grand Teton National Park. It had been raining, so not great views, but still a nice view. There's Jackson, the famous antlers, and then Afton, Wyoming, more antlers. As we got a little farther south now and they end up crossing the Snake River, there's Jim fixing a flat tire. Really the only mechanical issue we had on the trip. This ended up being a 370-mile day. I had reserved a yurt, about a 25-foot diameter yurt up in the high altitude, about 9,000 feet. It was kind of gnarly getting back up in here, but this was cool. It was a round uh, fabric or vinyl tent structure you see in the inside there with bunks and a wood-fired stove. So it was plenty warm, had plenty of firewood. And then we had a huge thunderstorm that night. And because of the altitude, as we left and continued up and over the pass, there was an inch or two of snow that had fallen with that storm. We were going over the Bald Mountain Pass at 10,600 feet there, and this is about 60 miles east of Salt Lake City. So this next day on day 8 is 400 miles or so. See that cute dog chasing us? And I thought this road was going to be dirt. It turns out they had paved it since the map was made on the GPS. But just a beautiful road, and then ended up finding the Skyline Drive, which is about a 10,000-foot road running north-south just east of Provo. A super nice road that I've been on before with my son Jordan years ago. And we did just part of this road, but it's a really nice off-road trail for bikes and ATVs. Got some good speed here. James there in front, and also Sean up ahead. So just a nice time. Then came back down the mountain, got rained on, and ended up spending the night in Ely, Nevada. I find these desert mountains really pretty, and but it's a long slab in the desert. You see some horses on the open range. Then this is Goldfield, Nevada. And we came across a guy on a dirt bike that had wiped out on the road and hurt his ankle. So we stopped to help him and got down to Big Pine along the Sierras, had a barbecue. Generally, just a fantastic trip.